Story 1. Eating at a person's house like it's a restaurant. Cuba, early 2000s. A lot of people would have side gigs to make money off of tourists. I had one of the best meals ever there. Pressure-cooked pork chops with rice and beans. Simple but perfect. Story 2. I loved India, but the number of people just throwing trash anywhere was staggering. Then the same people complain about how dirty the country is. Story 3. When I visited Japan, the thing that blew my mind was how quiet public spaces are. People don't talk on the subway at all. Everyone is either reading on their phones or just silently existing. It felt so weird at first, coming from the United States, where public transport sounds like a mix of phone calls, loud music, and life stories being shared with strangers. But honestly, after a few days, I kind of loved it. Imagine riding the subway without hearing someone's entire relationship drama at 7 a.m. Story 4. Grew up in Hawaii. Visited Canada. Did you know they have snow inside the cities? It's where people live. They have to push it to the sides of the roads so they can drive places. Sure, I saw it on TV, but this was real. It was so cold, and everyone was walking around like it was no big deal. Story 5. The honking. I've been to a few places where every car just honks constantly as they're driving down the street. No particular reason, just honking for the sake of honking. I would go absolutely crazy living in one of those places and having to listen to that all the time. Story 6. In New Zealand, the horizon felt claustrophobic to me. I technically live in a valley in Australia, but that just means lots of flat land bordered by distant mountains here, at least in the specific valley it does. The landscapes in the areas I visited in New Zealand were so vertical. Even on the coast, I felt like the mountains were peering over my shoulder. Story 7. Taking a crap on a moving train in India and watching the poo fall through a hole in the floor, especially made for taking a crap. The poo fell on the rail track. Story 8. When I went to Brazil in the early 2000s, department stores had 3 prices on the items. Let's say 15, 15, 15. I asked why there were 3 prices, and they said that was for layaway, basically. You pay 15 now, 15 next week, and 15 the following week to get the item. The reason is that, at that time, there wasn't much consumer credit available to purchase items. Story 9. I am from Europe but have been living in Australia for 20 years, where I am a teacher. I am stunned to see the state of the school grounds and classrooms after a day. Students throw their rubbish on the grounds and on the classroom floors. Students get offended when you ask them to clean up after themselves. This shocks me deeply. Story 10. Went to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, last year. I was extremely overwhelmed by how dense the city was. The busy roads, the high-rise buildings, and no matter how far you look at the horizon, you are greeted with more tall buildings. As someone who grew up in a small city where there are only a handful of tall structures and the horizon is either the forest or the sea, I couldn't bear it, and it kills the mood for future traveling. Story 11. The traffic when driving in Guatemala City. We were later told that the population of the greater Guatemala City area was, at the time, around 6 million people, which was about the same as my entire home state of Kentucky. Story 12. Corruption. I'm from the Netherlands, where almost nobody is really poor, government officials earn a decent wage, and corruption is heavily frowned upon. I was shocked when living in Spain and especially Portugal at how much interactions with the government and businesses were negotiations. Want a building permit? Grease my palms. Don't want to pay sales tax? Pay in cash. Want to dodge that fine? Give me some cash. In the Netherlands, cash money is used less and less. And I now understand why in the European Union in general this is still far away because digital money creates paper trails. I knew corruption is a big thing in developing countries, but I never expected it to be common even in developed nations, and I was shocked at how it feels to meet serious corruption. It made life feel much more arbitrary, as it is much harder to predict the outcome of any interaction, especially with the government. And the best solution to corruption is to become corrupt yourself, something I had a really hard time with. Story 13. Nobody was obeying traffic laws on the streets in Mexico, or there was a lack of traffic laws. I'm not sure which. It was so chaotic, with people just crossing the street whenever and all-terrain vehicles driving next to trucks. Story 14. When I lived in Korea, I could save my seat at a Starbucks by just leaving my phone at a table. No one touched it or stole it. Nothing. People left the table alone too, even when it was busy. Story 15. My biggest cultural shock in Brazil was how they keep dogs. They are allowed to pee and poop everywhere inside and are lucky if they are walked outside of the house for 10 minutes a week. In my country, this is considered animal abuse. I lived there for a while and never got used to it. Story 16. In Japan, even if it's a very hot summer day, the majority of Japanese people will wear long sleeves, jackets, and pants no matter what. At least that's been my experience when visiting family in Japan. Story 17. Vietnam. The traffic doesn't seem to have any rules except for which side of the road to be on. It's mostly mopeds, and everyone weaves in and out of lanes. People cross where they can, and traffic seems to just slide around them. I expressed to a guide that it was amazing there aren't more accidents, but he told me about 30 people die each month in traffic accidents in his city alone. The smells. The aroma of amazing food mixed with open garbage and stormwater drain smell is confusing. Story 18. Donkum. Translates literally to shit needle. I lived in Korea for 2 years. As a prank, somebody might poke your anus with a finger or two. It's mostly kids that do it to each other, and it's seen as roughly equivalent to a wedgie. Story 19. Both are from this year. France doesn't really do milkshakes. I went to McDonald's in France to find they don't serve milkshakes. Instead, they have barely flavored water. And I'm currently in Portugal, where apparently a hot chocolate here is literally a whole mug of some kind of melted chocolate, about thick yogurt consistency at its finest, so not really the drink I thought it would be. I asked the waitress if it was normal, and she said she thinks it is normal for Portugal to be like that, so okay. Story 20. Brazil. A barbecue pit in the middle of one's living room for making giant slabs of rotisserie beef. Passing around a single container of steaming hot herbal mate in university lecture halls that everyone took sips from. Espresso machines in the corner of the room in the most random places, including post offices. Going to the gas station to sit on plastic lawn chairs and tables to pre-drink before partying, which were set around the gas pumps, and the gas station wasn't serving gas for the rest of the evening. So many gas stations did this. China. Staring culture like you wouldn't believe. Get into an accident and need help? Everyone stares and does nothing. Using the bathroom? People stare right at you, and if you're in a stall, they will peek over the walls to stare at you. Eating? Get stared at. Sitting and minding your own business? People will walk right up to you and stare at you but say nothing even if you try saying hello. United States. Me complaining about the price of food, but then the portions are like 4 times what you get back home, enough for takeout to eat for the next 2 meals. Random people talk to you about anything and everything, just to kill time. Canada, Vancouver specifically. Nobody talks to you. Everyone looks away when passing you on the sidewalk. You go to parties and clubs, and when you approach groups to say hello, they look at you like, what the heck? The strangest, most antisocial city I've ever been to. Beautiful landscape, though. Thailand. Spray nozzles that look like garden hoses next to every toilet to wash your butt, but no toilet paper. It's illegal to point at a photo of the king. It's also highly frowned upon to use your feet to point at anything, even if you're lying down relaxing. Pointing at someone with your foot is highly offensive. They basically just dislike feet in Thailand. Story 21. I've just moved to Scotland, and every public women's bathroom, whether it's in a restaurant, museum, or shopping center, has free pads and tampons. It's kind of amazing and so comforting. I never feel like I'm going to get caught out. Totally not a thing in Australia. Story 22. In Japan, the cleanest country, everyone is considerate and organized. People are quiet on the train. Children can go home alone safely. Animals can walk by the people there and not be startled. I went 2 times. Story 23. All the homeless people in the cities in the United States. The rows of cheap tents basically everywhere they fit. I was most shocked when I saw a few young women come out of those, dressed to go to their regular jobs. Story 24. Anywhere where neglect and cruelty to animals is the social norm and acceptable, large animals are kept in tiny cages, and others are clearly starving, dying and suffering in front of your eyes. Once I've seen it, I can't unsee it, and I just want to scoop them up, take them all home, and love them. I find the injustice difficult to let go of. It takes the joy out of anything else I experience there, and I might as well just not go. Story 25. Four-way stops in the United States. Like, what the hell? Does everyone stop? Why? Coming from a European, I don't think there's a single country here that has anything remotely similar. Story 26. I am from the United States, Taiwan. The way the urinals were public. A female janitor would likely come to clean the floor behind you while you were using them. I even went to a theater where the urinals were not in bathrooms. There were women walking past me while I was using them. My mother was shocked by how clean the subways were when she visited. She was also really surprised by how few police officers she saw. Story 27. Homeless in the United States. Every bus and metro ride had a homeless person there and made the whole atmosphere uncomfortable. I don't want to discriminate or anything, but many of them were doing drugs, resting their feet on other seats, making strange noises, throwing garbage and other things. They were in every neighborhood too. No store had public restrooms, and in every restaurant that had them, they were password protected. Story 28. Indonesia. Tea and coffee served with so much sugar that they are syrup. Pay toilets. People taking candid pictures and videos of us because we look so different. People sleeping directly on the floor or patio. Traffic that is barely controlled chaos where stoplights and signs are merely suggestions. Hot drinks or broth served in and directly consumed from plastic bags. Wet bathrooms and cistern washes for cleanliness. I ended up carrying wet wipes in double-bagged and double-sealed plastic bags. Wild dogs everywhere in the rural areas. Cats kept in cages. Standard hotels were very dirty, while international hotels were cleaned well. No hot water in most homes and homestays. We stayed at homestays because the hotels were too dirty. The generosity and kindness of most people. A medical clinic gave my husband a breathing treatment right in the doctor's office. We had an extended stay, and it was pretty amazing. So much culture shock. I really wish the various countries of the world could arrange a student exchange for the masses. Experiencing other cultures is hugely beneficial. Story 29. Not necessarily shocked, but surprised. When I spent some time in the United States and went shopping for the first time, I did not have a car. So, I walked on the side of the road and brought my backpack with me. It was a Kmart, I believe. And when I went to the checkout and started packing things into my backpack, I got comments from several people there about how that was weird and that they had never seen this. I guess everyone used a bunch of those flimsy plastic bags and then put them into their cars to take stuff home. Story 30. I was in Cameroon working on fixing up an elementary school. Well, the kids didn't have a toilet, so they all ran to the middle of the schoolyard and just peed. Story 31. People in Japan wearing long pants or skirts in the summer despite the intense heat and crazy humidity. I saw maybe 2 or 3 people wearing shorts during my entire trip. Almost everyone I saw had their legs covered. Story 32. Going to the only train station in Austin, Texas, the capital of the state with a population of 1 million, and seeing that the train station is smaller than the smallest of the 3 train stations in my hometown of 140,000 people, and having only 2 trains a day. Story 33. Visiting the United States, the number of people suffering from chronic but easily treatable diseases that would never have been allowed to progress to that point. Story 34. When I was in the United States, I saw more homeless people on the first trip from the airport to my lodgings than I had seen in total during my 30 years of living in Europe. Huge culture shock, to say the least. Story 35. In Australia, you have, or used to have, the option of bringing your own bottle of wine to the restaurant for dinner. You would be charged a corkage fee for the use of glasses and for the waiter to serve it. I have since learned that this is common in some places in Europe as well. Story 36. Someone dying in the street in Jaipur, India. The person, whose body was an intense purple color from head to foot, was in his death throes. People were hurrying past without paying the least attention. Story 37. I'm a mission worker in Sierra Leone. I expected the malnourished people, pregnant children, and armless individuals. But I didn't know until I got there that the Sierra Leonean way of saying shoo or go away to someone bothering you is, I'll beat you. I thought my friend was going to get into a fight with an elderly beggar. Story 38. Japan. Clean city. Virtually no homelessness. Almost everyone was nice and trustworthy, especially in the far countryside. Healthy food is available everywhere, even in convenience stores, and unhealthy food is rarely seen or desired. No one I saw wore their ignorance or stupidity as a badge of honor. I could go on and on. Story 39. When I visited Mexico, they turn on their hazard lights a little before they stop or slow down. I was super confused the first time it happened, but it honestly makes a lot of sense. Story 40. Traveling to South Africa as a European and seeing the townships as far as your eye can see. Seeing extreme poverty and obscene wealth in the same place. 3 meters of barbed wire fence around basically any building. Having a driver take you anywhere, especially in Johannesburg area. That's when I understood the effects of colonialism. Disclaimer. This was around 15 years ago, and I don't know if things have changed since then. Story 41. Philippines and the way they drive, especially in Cebu. Everyone drives like they're in a Grand Theft Auto lobby. I went on a public bus coming from the safari. The bus I got on had a turbo on it, so it was rapid. When we hit traffic, an ambulance went past, and the driver started tailgating it while doing 70 miles per hour. Meanwhile, the conductor was hanging out, screaming like a siren.